Hi, everyone, and welcome to another powerful conversation with another powerful woman. I'm delighted today to be joined by Jennifer Cox. I believe you like to be known as Jenny. So I will let you introduce yourself, Jenny, as you know yourself much better than I do.
I should hope so. Um, Brilliant to be here, Claire. I'm really excited about it. My name is Jenny Cox. I work in cybersecurity. I'm the head of communications for Cyber Women Ireland, and I also am a security engineering manager for Tenable. And a mum of four, probably the most important role of all of them. I've been working in tech for 17 years, nearly 18 years now. Um, Tripped and fell into it, but really glad to be here. And I've really kind of done all my growth, crammed it into the last, say, 4 or 5 years. And I'm excited to
Mm,
talk about that and what that's involved. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's so many things there. When I hear you say mum of four, that kind of overwhelms me a bit because that's like twice the number I have, and I think two's two's at my saturation point. So four, and I'm like, I bow down to you. And then you say that you work in technology and cybersecurity and all these things. I'm like, that's a really challenging environment to work in as well. And so there's like kind of lots going on there. Tell us a bit about how you stumbled into all of that. I mean, not necessarily the children for being a mum of four. That's kind of, I guess,
Yeah.
speaks for itself. But
Everyone can work that one out.
yeah,
Yeah, I about what was it, 2006, I took on a role, an admin role with a tech company where I was going to be logging cases for the support team. And as things got busier over time and I was just listening to the support team, I started to, as I was logging the calls, answer some of the questions for customers. I was always pretty handy on all things tech anyway. And then I was answering enough of them to be able to go for a position in the support team, and picking it all up kind of as I went and doing some exams as I go too. And then I progressed from that support team to being on the software support. So we looked after accountancy, retail, and payroll software. So I went to work for that team, very specific in the software side, which was kind of funny because numbers was never my forte. So I could always explain to people what happened behind the scenes and why their numbers went wrong. But when they were trying
yeah,
to add them up, I was like, oh, no. But good at the tech bit, explaining to him behind the scenes. And then I moved to the support center supervisor, and then I moved up to being the IT coordinator for the group. So there was a tech company, and then there's other companies that they owned as well, and there's an office in Dublin and an office down in Wexford. So I was responsible for everything from cabling and updating servers and setting up new users to rolling out phone systems or anything that needed doing on the tech side by the time I was done. So that was 11 years from start to finish there. And then I wanted to do cybersecurity, and it was very much kind of at the early stages of cybersecurity, really, for the EMEA side of things. So we weren't, the company I was with wasn't really in a position that they were considering any great investment in it at the time. And it was time to spread my wings, shall we say. So I
mm,
applied to Tenable, and I became the first employee on the ground in Dublin. For the Tenable office, and we have since grown. There's loads of us there now, and obviously we now can work from home or the office, whichever two. And I'm 7 years with them since January. So yeah, that was like boink, 7 years and it's done.
brilliant. And what do Tenable do?
So Tenable is a cybersecurity company. So originally we would have been on just vulnerability management. Nessus scanners is usually what people recognize more so than
Mm,
the Tenable name. But now we've gone to full platform. So we look after everything from web application scanning to AD security, to cloud security, to OT security, to traditional vulnerability management on-prem, in the cloud. If you can think of it, we probably do it. And now we do it
yeah,
all in a platform as well, called Tenable One.
yeah. Wow.
Mm.
And if I remember correctly, you do work also in with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that right?
Yes. So I do it in
Yes.
Tenable and outside of Tenable. And
Okay.
that's the bit where the real growth for me has happened, I'd say, over the last, certainly the last 4 or 5 years. So in Tenable, the first time I ever mentored, I did it in Tenable on our own mentor program. Loved it. And then started to get, because I wanted to do it somewhere where I felt a little bit safer, because I've never mentored
Mm,
before. And I thought, why would anybody find anything that I've ever done useful to them? But sure, we'll give it a go. And I still work pretty closely with the very first person I ever mentored. He's one of my besties, I would say now. And it's years since we did it. But since then, I have mentored men and women from all sorts of backgrounds and all different places in the world. So after Tenable, I went to mentor through Mentors, which is women mentors, because it had a really good structure. So if you're new to it, it gives you a chance to mentor, and they give you like say 4 sessions or 6 sessions, but they tell you what the expectation would be for those sessions to talk about, and then you fill the content yourself. And then I branched out into a lot of other groups like Women Tech and YSIS, which is Women in Cybersecurity, doing some mentoring in there, group mentoring, individual mentoring. And then some people have contacted me directly, or they've met me at events or something and asked about mentoring. And I've done that. And yeah, I've been involved in a lot of, I don't really say no to any women tech group to get involved in. I don't think there can be any downsides to it. I've never seen a downside to it, to be honest. They take up time, but a lot of times these things can be done, a lot of things can be done remotely. And I kind of pick and choose. I have a new calendar here behind me because I was struggling to keep track of some of the events and stuff that were happening. So now I have it. If it's not in front of me and I can't actually see it, I'm never going to remember that I'm supposed to do it. So I have that calendar there. But yeah, so in the very beginning, when it came to getting involved in women tech, there was a colleague of mine that I spoke to about it and said, I'd really like to get involved. And she was like, just do it. I said, but I'm commuting 4 hours a day, 2 each way, and I have the kids, and I'm not alone. My husband, also does his share with the kids. Actually, to be fair, now he does almost all of it because he gave up work during COVID and we haven't sent him back because, well, he's more than a full-time job at home with the boys, to be fair. But when I spoke to this girl, what we talked about was, how I would do it. And she said, just start, which in itself was a mentoring conversation. She was younger than me. You don't have to be older than somebody to mentor them. So I said that anything that came up, women tech related, didn't even have to be cyber specific, that I was going to say yes to it. And anyone I've ever mentored will have heard me say, I call it the Yes Project. I'm sure it has many other names in many other fields. But like, if there's something that you're really interested in and you really want to do, when it comes up, just say yes to it, even if it terrifies you, which many cases it did for me. So whether I was involved in fundraising or I was going to meet with somebody or talk with somebody, I said yes, I would do it. And 9 months later, then I was speaking at the Women in Tech event in the convention centre in Dublin on a stage in front of 1,200 people, which is pretty terrifying. I still have a video.
Yeah, wow.
But that's how much of a difference it made in that space of time. And now I roll with it as things come up. I continue to get involved in it. And if people have questions or people want to get involved or anything at all, I'm happy to help where I can.
Yeah. So tell me about, because we mentioned about you being a mum and your husband now looks after the kids, but you've also got that working in a very male dominated industry. What sort of challenges did you face in that on a day-to-day basis?
So I was speaking to a colleague of mine that I met for the first time. She's been working in Tenable for, I think she said it was about 12 years. I met her for the first time yesterday. And we were talking about what it was like, 15 years ago when we were working. And, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, I stayed quiet and I kept my head down, because when you're in an environment that you're the odd one out as such, the last thing you want to do is draw attention to yourself, because people are expecting you to fail and people are expecting you to be different, but not in a positive way. So certainly for the first few years that I was involved in it, I was inclined to, laugh at the inappropriate jokes and, play the games or, learn about video games that I would never play. I have to do it now because the kids do it. But, things that I just wouldn't have been interested in and never brought certain conversations to the table. Least of all, would you talk about anything like periods or menopause, because it's just not done in a room full of men, at least not at the time. They're much better now, I have to say.
Yeah.
So noticing the change, and like I say, in the last, say, 10 years, and realizing that, hang on, I don't have to stay this quiet. I am able to, my expectations have been reset with regards. If what I'm talking about is normal human day-to-day things and people are deeming it inappropriate, then the problem is theirs, not mine. Or if they're talking about something that is inappropriate and I call them on it, then the problem is theirs and not mine. Do you know, it's very easy to look at things in a much more black and white way now, and it's still not easy to call people out on things. I find obviously
Yeah.
the longer I'm at it, and I'm older and I'm at this game longer, and I passed 40, which is like the magic switch for not caring anymore about what people think about me. And with that, it's become easier for me. But I see a lot of women coming into tech now that just simply won't accept it. And
Yeah.
why would I want to mislead anyone, you know, or teach them to be any different than that? That's fantastic. And they've
Yeah.
inspired me to stand up and go, do you know what? No, I'm just the same as any of you. I've just the same skills and just the same talent. I would expect the same salary. I would expect the same opportunities. I mean, the very first time I had a chance for a promotion, I remember my boss at the time didn't consider me for it, didn't even cross his mind till I came to him and said, I want to throw my hat in the ring. And he was like, oh, I didn't think you'd want to do that because you have, at the time, 3 children, because you have children. And I was like, what? And then I realized that, you know, well, there's lots of times I realized that, but in that particular instance, I was kind of thinking, wow, I wonder how many other times I've been missed where I
Yeah.
haven't realized that someone has overlooked me because of that. And to be fair to that particular boss, he apologized afterwards for his shortcomings in making
Yeah.
that assumption. And he was educated in that particular sense. But there's probably been many times prior where I've been passed over. And I could tell you hundreds of stories about times where, you know, inappropriate things are said, and not lewd necessarily, but just things that where we would be second class citizens in those scenarios. And you know how that wouldn't be acceptable now. It's not acceptable now. It shouldn't have been acceptable then, but there's more of us, and powers in numbers as such. So, you know, I like, especially, you know, the women that I know now, the support that I have now and the support that I like to give in return. I mean, through mentorship, there's a lot of women that I've spoken to that have been in difficult work circumstances, have problems with colleagues, are not getting seen for promotion, are not getting the increase that they deserve, or getting less of an increase than their colleague who's doing the same job. All of those kind of things come up. And you know, the one thing I noticed out of them, and I'm sure you come across this all the time, Claire, is that in 99% of those cases, those women just want permission to fight their own corner.
Yeah.
So and I don't see that as much, at least in with the men in any role, in any job, not limited to tech.
Yeah.
Women have a tendency to go, it's okay to fight this, isn't it? And having so many more women around us and so many more women speaking the same story as such is allowing us to feel permitted to do this, and we're becoming more empowered by it. But I've noticed that out of, like, I've mentored about 30 people now, I would say about 25 of them were female, and out of those 25, at least 20 of them, at some point we've had the conversation where I'm like, no, this is not okay, and here's how we're going to deal with it. It's always a we, because it's important that we feel supported.
Yeah.
But here's what we're going to do next. And power to them. Every single one of them have gone off and they've gotten more money and they've gotten the promotion and they've, you know, spoken to HR an issue, and every single time those issues have been resolved. It's just, you know, I want us to get to the stage where we no longer feel like we need to ask permission, that it's just instinctive, where we'll correct these changes.
Yeah. And I think I find that often deep down women know that they have the right to make these requests of themselves, but sometimes it's kind of tied in with confidence, but they don't have the words to communicate it in the right way, and just even helping with the logic behind it is helpful, and can make quite a big difference.
You need to see as well the women before you. Like, everybody learns by example. Children learn how to walk because they see other people walk. So you need to see the women before you behaving in that way as well. So, like, I mean, I've worked under, there's a woman that works alongside me as a director in on the CSM side. She only just left, but she was a powerhouse. Like, she took no rubbish from anybody. She knew exactly what she wanted. She knew exactly how to get it. And you don't have to be mean to people. We were talking about this just before we went on air. You don't have to be mean to people to get what you want. You can still be respectful and courteous and and hold your own power without having to put on anyone else down in order to do so. So for me, seeing a woman like that, and any other women that are there's been less of them ahead of me, as I hope there will be more of them by the time the next round of people come up. But
Yeah.
seeing them makes a huge difference. If I see their behavior and they're holding their own and they're not meek and, you know, they're making demands for things to be right, then I feel completely empowered to do the same thing for me and for anyone following me, which rolls. It all rolls from there. Like everybody does better with it in that way. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Just reminds me of a very sweet compliment I got from my daughter yesterday. So having two daughters, which, you know, it's obviously very different from having sons, but you know, she said to me, how is it that you've managed to bring us up to be so sort of well, not spoilt and not have great expectations of what they should have, and that I don't know, just to and for that to and for them to be okay with that. She, I just don't understand how you do that as a parent. And I was like, well, thank you very much. I mean, I don't know how you do that as a parent, but
Grateful.
you stay true to yourself, and as long
Yeah.
you know you treat other people as you expect to be treated, and you go by what you know to be right, what you feel to be right.
Absolutely. And a big thing that I know that you stand for is that being grateful for everything, big, small,
Yeah,
whichever it is. And I'd be a big believer in that too. Like, I mean, you can have days that can go absolutely wrong from beginning to end. But if you dig deep enough, you will find something in there that went right. And I know during COVID is a time where we all struggled with trying to find the positives. One of my favorite things to do, wasn't my favorite for the first few weeks, but one of my favorite things to do was I used to make the boys, we all sat down for dinner together. With when Gary used to work in the evenings and I worked in the daytimes, it was really hard for us ever to sit down and have dinner together. But it
yeah,
was one thing that we insist on doing. We don't manage it with other meals or even with
yeah,
homework, splitting or
yeah.
divide and
Same.
conquer, as you say. But we sit down and have dinner together. And during COVID, we carried on the same. Now you've got a house with teenagers and Oliver was 6 when that started, but and they don't want to spend any more time with you than they have to. Least of all, then sit down to have dinner after spending all day, every day in the house with you. But I
Yeah,
started to introduce at the dinner table. I said, okay, tell me what was something that was good about today. And I remember the grunts and the groans and the sighs the first time that I said it, and I thought this is not going to go very well. And I think they all said it was like the dinner that was in front of them or the cup of tea that they made earlier. It was low ball and like there was no big excitement achievement. And it was hard to find a big excitement achievement. We were all like saying
yeah.
COVID, we were all like, yay, my hair doesn't look ridiculous today. You know, that was as good as it got. Like but we shouldn't have
Flashbacks.
COVID haircuts, like woo. But after a while, I remember being outside. We had made this little, it was like a shared space behind the houses on my street, and we had put a basketball net up, and there was literally about a 6 by 6 foot little concrete square, so the boys could throw baskets. Is that what I'm going to be shot for not even calling that by whatever I'm supposed to call it by?
Don't ask me.
Take
Playing netball.
But they came in one day, and the youngest one, he's 16 now. He was maybe 14 at the time. Like he said, I know what I'm going to talk about at the dinner table today. I'm going to talk about whatever particular shot he had taken that was great, that he'd been trying to take for ages and he figured out. And that was the moment where I think for me, I was like, there it is. It's the little things, like all these little things add up. And even when we were all confined to our houses or within 5K of it, and we're sick of it, I've seen every inch of 5K around my house, and everybody's, you know, lonely. We were all lonely, even being in a house full of people, it's lonely. To be able to find something that went well. And he was excited all day to tell us about this at the dinner table, which now or pre-COVID, we would have thought, well, that's not a big deal. But to be
Yeah,
able to find it at a time when everything else seems so miserable is important. And I think we
yeah,
should all do that. Like, and that's something that I do a lot around the women in tech stuff as well. And when I talk to people, when I'm mentoring, is it's really important to find these things, because when you suffer from things like imposter syndrome, and you have a day where everybody asks you a question and you're like, I don't know the answer to any of these things. How did I get this job? And oh my God, will they ever find out that I haven't a clue what I'm doing? But somewhere in between it, you will have helped somebody. It could have been a colleague that asked you something and you helped them quickly because it's something you know, but you haven't even
Yeah.
remembered that you did it. That's the thing. You've helped them and they've gone on to do whatever it was they were doing, and it
Yeah.
snowballs from there. So to mark those down, like even as an exercise, I often get people to get out the old notebook and write them
Yeah.
down, even if there's three
Yeah.
things a day. So when you're having that day where you feel like you're an imposter or the world is falling down around your ears, if you flick back through your notebook and remember in the beginning it was the cup of tea that was the
Yeah.
big win, and further down the line it was that you maybe you finished a project with a team in work, or you had some big achievement at home, that you can see that you're always growing. It could be
Yeah.
little teeny tiny things, but they're all part of the growth.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's really interesting when you hear that for every one negative thought you have, it needs to be balanced out by three positive thoughts, which is kind of alarming the first time you hear it, but it just goes to show how that, the power of negative thought, but equally the cumulative effect of this positive thinking that just builds and builds. And much rather that become a habit than
Yes.
than this sort of negative spiral. And it's okay to have days when things are harder. Life is not always going to be easy, and that we learn from all those challenges. But to have the appreciation for the daffodils that are coming out, or the sound of all the birds at the moment, and the blossom that's starting to appear on the trees, it's just all of those things that make this world such a special place. Really helps give us perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, all those little things, and we got really good at recognizing them all when we had nothing else to look at. That sounds terrible, but during COVID and now that everything's opened up again, I think I'm finding a lot of people around me are more open about how they feel about being in those situations. So whether it's that there's lots of people around and they're feeling overwhelmed by it, or the world is suddenly moving faster again and they're feeling it's too fast for them. I think it's okay to stick your hand in the air and say, I need a breather, and take that breather so that you can acknowledge the things that are going right. It needs to be done all the time. And when you do
Yeah.
it, I'm sure you've seen yourself, when you do it, you start to find that at least 90% of your week runs in a pretty positive way, even
Yeah.
if everything, even if your builders aren't, you're having problems with the house.
Yeah. As I am.
But you find that you'll brush it off because it's not the thing
Yeah.
that's going to ruin your day or ruin your week or ruin your year.
No.
You've learned the skills. You've learned to go, well, hey, you've managed to get a builder. That's virtually impossible to get here at the
Yeah.
moment anyway.
Yeah.
But there's things that are happening that are going well, and that's not something you can control, nor is it something that you should be given the energy, the negative energy it's looking for. So
Yeah.
focus on the things that are going well and that are going right, and eventually you'll find that it's actually hard to focus on the negative things. And I think
Yeah.
that's the
And
ultimate.
exhausting.
Yeah.
It's just so heavy. It just, yeah. Tell us what sort of tools or go-to techniques you use to keep yourself in that positive space, aside from journaling or gratitude journals, etc.
Yeah. So I like to take timeouts. So I would always I'm normally pretty busy, and anyone that I work with will they usually send me the little like vomit emoji face when they're trying to find time in my calendar. And even my boss tells me all the time, clean up your calendar. But I tend to I like to run my day knowing exactly what's happening next. And if
Yeah.
anybody ever contacts me and says, I can't find time in your calendar, I'll find time. I know there's time there somewhere. But one of the very first things I do in my calendar, and I encourage anyone on my team to do the same thing, is I book the time that I need the downtime. So, you need your lunch break. That's obvious. But if I want to go for a walk or something like that, I make sure I book time in every day to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because if I can't get up and leave my desk and go do something, whether it's walk the dog, or maybe on some days when it's really, really tiring, maybe it's just lie down on the bed and listen to some music for 20 minutes, something like that,
Yeah.
anything at all. But if I don't have that safety net booked into the day, I begin my day anxious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If I know that there's no room to breathe in the whole day, I begin it that way. So I make sure that I have it in, and I always feel much calmer about the day. And it doesn't matter if it's a big important meeting or a little friendly chat or whatever it is, nothing phases me for the day then, because I know I have that coming. I can step away from everything for a few minutes, kind of gather my thoughts, or listen to true crime documentaries usually, which is probably the polar opposite of personality. The more gruesome, the better. I'm terrible for it. And I listen to that and walk the dog and come back, and then I'm reset and ready to go for whatever the rest of the day holds. And I think everybody knows of something, is whether you did it when you were small or whether you're a teenager or as an adult, there's something that when you do it, you just get all lost in it. So maybe it's that you like to get out and stick the hands in the soil as such, or maybe you like to cook, or whatever it is. If you can find time in the day to do that, and I mean, we're not all going to find time to garden on our lunch break, but if it works, whatever way, as long as you block it into your day, even if you block it at the end of your day. So like my kids even know how I work my calendar at this stage, so that sometimes like I'll book it up till maybe 6 o'clock. And for a while I was working on some projects that went on in the evening, but I book, it sounds silly now when I go say it out loud, sometimes I book things in with them specifically so that they can see that too, because they know how I work. I like to know from the minute I get out of bed till the minute I go to bed what I'm expected to be doing at certain times. It's just how I work. Not everybody else does it that way. So for them, they like to see their stuff slotted in, so they know that I'm not doing anything else at the same time, that I'm definitely putting the time aside for them, rather than ad hoc, because they know if it's something ad hoc, I'm usually much more distracted. So I'd rather get it in and go, I'm not doing anything else, phone's away, everything else is away, we're going to do this. Like my 9-year-old is, he was the chap that was 6 at the beginning of COVID. I've promised him a date night, because they'll call it a date night when they're 9. When they get older than that, it's just weird. But he's out on Saturday night, and we've booked that in the calendar. And he's like, so from what time will we be leaving at? And what time have we got? And he's got every minute of that time scheduled in between for what we're doing. It's pretty much the whole evening and afternoon of Saturday.
I love it.
But they like that. And for me as well, I feel more like I'm getting to everything. I mean, certainly as a mother, you're never going to feel like you do enough for them. You're never going to feel like you're doing it right, really. Sometimes the minute you think you've got it right, one of them will do something that will remind you that you're human. And with 4 of them, like you say, I'm outnumbered. So, and they're older. Like I have a 24-year-old, a 19-year-old, 16-year-old, and then the 9-year-old. Surprise. At the end. But inevitably, one of them, when you're celebrating the achievements of one, another one will do something to make sure that you don't spend too much time on that pedestal as greatest parent of the year.
Oh my God, I love it.
So the reality check is always there. But putting the time in, and they've learned that too. They've learned to make sure and put time in their day for things that they want to do. And for one of them in particular, he suffers a lot from anxiety, and we've taken a long time to teach him that you realize when you go out and you play sports, you do so much better. So now every day without fail, even on days when he's miserable and he doesn't want to go out and he's contrary, he'll go out and he'll run, or he'll play basketball, or he'll do something. And he knows that will correct him, and he makes time to do that. And if he doesn't do that, he knows that not only is that day going to be ruined, but coming into the next day, it's going to start badly as well. So, I mean, the kids can do it, we can do it. And nobody is going to tell you that that's not the right thing to do. So numero uno is always you, numero uno. You can't look after the kids and you can't look after work and all the rest of it if you're not looking after yourself. So
no, exactly. I think there's some some really impressive life lessons that you're giving your kids there, because that's how they're going to go out into the big wide world, and some of them already are, and treat other people and treat their loved ones and their future generations as well with that sort of same value that you attach to each other in terms of time and quality, etc. It's really, really powerful.
I agree.
I really like that, the scheduling in. Don't have to admit I don't do that. I think my favorite times are when I have to play taxi driver to run the girls here or there, but those conversations are really nice in the car, or sometimes they're not conversations, sometimes it's singing along to the latest songs. We're currently deep into Pink's new album, and that's getting a lot of airtime in the car. So we're really enjoying that one. But
the car is a funny one actually, because I remember 3 of the 4 boys have had speech impediments at some stage, and they've gone to see a speech therapist. And one of the things the speech therapist had said to us is that when you're talking with the kids in the car, do you notice that he's better when he is in the back of the car and you're in the front driving? And we're like, actually, because they're not under the pressure when you're speaking to them face to face. And you find a lot with your teenagers and your kids and such is that they're a whole lot more likely to clam up if you sit down to talk to them. Here I am, let's have this chat, let's spend some quality time together. But in the car, I find that mine are way more likely to tell me what's going on with their life, or if they have something that's bothering them, they'll do that in the car when I'm driving, because they know that I can't watch them at the same time. I don't know if they consciously do that. And the other thing I notice as well is that 45 minutes, and anyone that I work with will tell you this, I go on about it all the time. 45 minutes is the optimum time. If you're talking to somebody for 30 minutes, they can be polite and nice, and we can make conversation for 30 minutes, without running dry of things, but without actually telling people anything really about ourselves. And an hour tends to be a bit long if people do start to get into things. But 45 minutes seems to be the optimum time when people are talking to you, that they relax after the 30, realize that you're interested in more than just checking a list of things with them. And they start to talk to you about what's really going on. So whether it's somebody in a team that you're leading, or it's a friend of yours, or a family member, or your kids, I always find if you can get them, it's hard to get a teenager to sit down for 45 minutes. But if you can get them for 45 minutes, they'll start to actually tell you what's happening. Not for the first 30, they'll be like, and they'll be showing you Instagram posts and stuff. But after that,
I think that's really interesting to have that as a time frame guide. I hadn't observed that. I know also walking with the dog is another really good one. And the other thing in those situations I've noticed is that sometimes it's best just not to ask any questions, and just keep your mouth as shut as possible, and just go with the flow of whatever they bring up, and then so much more comes out. But when they feel grilled again, the shutters come completely down.
Especially when they come in from school. I remember the speech therapist saying that to me, because I'm the one that usually goes, okay, we've got 5 minutes. Here's what we got to do, blah, 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 and out. I'm the worst for it. My husband is a really good listener, and he'll stay quiet, and he thinks a lot about what he's like, the polar opposite to how I would come across. So I had to work really hard on that, on being so demanding, even though I didn't know I was being demanding, in how I, quiz the boys when they get in. So now, what was it she said to us? It was about not even asking them how their day was, but, it was a specific thing, like what was good about today, or so that you're bringing them to a positive, and then they'll continue talking for there. But like you, I find the same thing. Certainly, my 9-year-old comes out with me every time I walk the dog. He even gets rotten with me if I go out and walk the dog without him, even if it's only a 10-minute walk. But I realize that that's because he goes 19 to the dozen about match attacks, whatever it is that he's into at the moment. And eventually we do end up getting to a point where he'll talk about something that's, what's going on at school, good or bad. But, I find out everything that's going on there. And still with the teenagers, I had one for breakfast on his birthday. I took him out, just me and him, for breakfast. And again, bang on. He can nearly time it to the 45 minutes. There we go. He had mentioned that he was struggling with the reading, as in, he said the letters were moving on page, and I was going, that sounds a whole lot like dyslexia. So we're going to go have that looked at. But it came up, and it wouldn't have, when you're getting a 5-minute in, when you're flying by them all the time, they don't, they're on edge. They don't get a chance to take a breath and tell you what's really happening. So
that's brilliant. So we've been talking for over half an hour, and we could probably, I feel we could talk for way past the 45-minute talk, but Mark, but just to finish off, have you got a motto in life that you live by that you'd like to share?
I'd have a few of them, I guess. So there's probably 2 for today. One of them would be do it anyway. So whatever it is, if it spooks you and you're not sure whether you should do it anyway. There's nothing worse than going, I wonder if I'd have liked that. And then the other one is in relation to, can I control it? Like, if I can't control it, I'm not giving it my energy, and there's very few things that I can control, even things all about me. I can't really control them. So if I can't control it, can I control it? And if the answer is no, then I need to just let it go wherever it's going, and don't give it any more of my energy from there. So
I love that. That's really useful. Both of those are quite hard, but
yes.
hard to implement, not hard to hear, hard to actually really fully embody. That's brilliant. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, contact you, what's the best way of doing it? Obviously, you're tagged in these posts, but are there any other ways?
So I'm on, obviously on LinkedIn, and I'm probably the fastest to reply, I would say, on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter and Instagram as well, but I'm a little bit hit and miss with that. So I would say aim for LinkedIn first off.
Yeah.
And then through the Cyber Women Ireland, you can get me through any of the contact forms there if needs must. But yeah, aim for the LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. I think everyone's going to really have enjoyed listening to that. I've loved talking to you. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.